Welcome to the Rant Live. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Woo.
Welcome to the Rant. It's weird about the 4th of July because it feels like it's like the middle of summer, especially when you live here in Arizona. But it's actually just the beginning of summer, which is kind of strange.
More or less, yeah. It's and I feel like for us, of course, we're in the middle of a pretty significant drought, which, I mean, you guys are used to not having rain. It's not as familiar here all the time, so it's felt kind of oppressive the last few days. It's just kind of dry and gross and whatever. But yeah, it is kind of wild because not only is it technically, sort of more like the middle, but we're already into getting shorter days again, which is really kind of weird. And that's the only redeeming quality is at least it hasn't been quite as humid around here. So once the sun goes down, you get to about 9 o'clock at night and the sun has kind of crested and start getting under the trees on the horizon. It actually ends up being really comfortable. So I might just try to do that. I just had mentioned, I know it's blasphemous for our viewers and listeners, but I was just saying I had tickets. The iCubs are in town. And I kind of begrudgingly bought them. It's a weird week for minor league baseball because normally they're off Monday and they play Tuesday through Sunday. But this week, at least with this series, I don't know if it's this way with all of them, but I know they're playing tonight and they'll have off tomorrow night. But then my son has practice on Wednesday and Thursday, and he has games on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And so this was the only chance that we would have a chance to watch them, right? It was tonight. But I begrudgingly bought them because, like, shit, man, downtown on 4th of July, there's like other events going on. There's the fireworks going on. There's something, I forget what else is happening down there. So I'm like, it's going to be a zoo. We're going to have to leave early to get there. It's going to take us forever to get out. And my wife's like, well, if we go, I want to stay around and watch the fireworks. I'm like, no, like I want to leave in the 7th or 8th inning so we don't have to sit around and wait on all that traffic. So anyway,
trying to avoid it.
I'll watch the actual Cubs today instead. So.
There you go. And Bill Ass in the Capacalas had an asinine comment. So I just thought I'd point out that his last name suits his asinine comment.
Thanks for the weather report. I mean,
you're welcome.
Okay, cool, man.
Thanks for being a dick. Anyways, moving right along. So the Cubs have been playing really well. Very interesting. We're not used to that, and I don't really know what to do about it other than, I guess, to just be happy about it. But they could have swept the Red Sox. They were really close. Patrick Wisdom hit a late inning bomb or a late game bomb in the 8th inning. And they just couldn't pull it out. God, they stopped the Red Sox from scoring in the top of the 10th, and I thought they were going to win for sure, but then they couldn't score in the bottom of the 10th, which is just crazy. Don't see that happen too often in these extra inning games with this.
You do for the Cubs, though.
Runner. Yeah,
the Cubs do it a lot. I was trying to look up the stat on that, and gosh darn it, I will find it here at some point so I can regale you all with it. But man, it sucks.
Regale me, please. Regale.
Well, that's what I'm looking for here. I'll see. Oh, okay. So this is from Uncle Jeff at EB Softball on Twitter, right? If you want to go check this out from him. But after driving in 6 of their first 7 extra inning free base runners, the Cubs have now failed to drive in 8 of their last 9.
That's
so of their last 9 extra innings. Right, total, not just the 10th. They have failed to drive in the runner in 8 of those.
That's terrible. You start with a runner on second base with no outs.
All you got to do is hit a single.
It just speaks to how bad they are with runners in scoring position, which I know you wrote a piece about that. I mean, and they're getting runners in scoring position. They're just not getting the hits when the runners are in scoring position, and that usually costs you some wins.
Yeah. And what's wild about it, and what's funny, because when I first started mentioning it, people were like, yeah, we know they suck with runners in scoring position. I'm like, yes, that's been the case for a while. But the fact that, and I don't think the numbers have changed because it's only been a couple days, through Friday, they were second in Major League Baseball in terms of plate appearances with runners in scoring position. Second, right? They do better than almost anyone. I think the Red Sox were first, actually, but do better than almost any team in baseball, and like appreciably better too. So we're not talking about like, you know, one team's at 400 and one's at 399 and then 398. Like, it was, the Cubs are pretty clearly in second place, and you know, the top half, like the bottom half of the league, is nowhere close. And they had among the worst batting average, worst OPS. You know, it's just, it's not that they're bad with runners in scoring position necessarily that is surprising, because we've seen them do that for a long time. It's a fact that they're doing as good a job as anyone at getting runners to second and beyond. Ooh, look at Bill being more of a dick. Cool. I don't think it's time. I don't think Bill needs to be here anymore.
Bill, we have the ability to make it fewer people on the channel.
And actually, we'd rather have fewer than more in most cases. But this is what I love too. Is like a lot of people, and it's not surprising that's a Facebook comment, right? Because a lot of people on Facebook will be like, it's obvious from the engagement on this post that no one reads this site. I'm like, you guys realize that the people who comment on a Facebook thread is not necessarily indicative of the number of people who are reading, right? Like, that's not the way it works. We do.
Bill, I just zapped Facebook, Bill.
But, and I also
zapped him. Bill, you can watch, but you can no longer comment. So there.
I'd prefer if you don't even watch. Plus, I'm wondering how does he know how many people are on it? Because his counts are different from what my counts are, and I'm seeing the live count right there. Granted, it's not like we got 1,000-person audience going on here, but Eric, I love Cubs Inside too. And he did correct himself, so I just having fun with that. But no, it is, if we go back to the topic at hand, we do a great job of getting Bill Asamakalops. I apologize for butchering your name. I'm just honestly not saying it correctly because I can't see it anymore.
Ass in the Kalapalapalus.
Asamakopoulos.
Ass.
I don't know.
Bill
Ass. Anyway,
Bill's
taking up.
Famous,
Bill's
dude.
monopolizing it. Bill's not even here anymore. But no, it's as good a job as they do of, and you'll see it. How many times does that happen? Like, they'll get like consecutive singles to start an inning, and then they'll strike out twice and fly out somewhere, a pop out, or just the dumbest stuff, right? It is
to be like a bloop.
Yeah. And except like the other day,
or like a Tuplon or something like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do the dumbest stuff to wipe it out, or they'll have, you know, a bunch of infield singles or something, right? Which sometimes they can get enough of those and scratch them across, but then they can't do it when it's 10th inning, man. Just, and then what the other day, like, was it, well, last night, wasn't it? So Contreras started on second, then like Hap got hit on the first pitch that he saw, and they have first and second with no outs and cannot capitalize. You know,
I mean,
like,
do you think there's an advantage? I get kind of the strategy behind it. Doesn't seem like right now there's much strategy, and I think going forward, as this ghost runner kind of goes a year, 2, 3 years beyond, people are going to get smarter about what they do. But I mean, to me, it kind of almost feels like you'd want to walk the first batter.
Yeah, just to set up because
you could
everywhere.
have a double play. Yeah.
Well, that, or if you're
or at least, and then bunt.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I am team Buck Funting, but, and I still, nobody ever bought that shirt that I made, and I understand it because it's a little bit weird. It feels like something Mac would wear on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But I had one that was just a picture of a you know, a deer, a buck head, and it just had the buck, and below that said Funting. And I just thought that was hilarious, but apparently only like 2 other people think that, and neither of them felt like spending $20 on a T-shirt. But
I think it was the graphics, maybe. I don't think it was the.
No, it looked really funny because it was it reminded me of the one, so like Mac, and the reason I say this because he had a picture of it was just a you know, stylized bear with antlers, and it said beer. This is like a bear deer. But if you're the home team in particular, right, and if you hold the visitors in the top half of an extra inning, all you have to do is get that runner. That is it. Because if you're the visitor, you can't look at it like, hey, that one run is going to be enough for us. You have to assume the other team is going to score that. So you're looking to score 2. But if you hold that team and you get your second at bat, get that guy over to third now with 1 out, or maybe you get lucky. And like we saw with Horner the other day, right? You lay down a bunt, you end up getting a hit out of it, whatever. Of course, if you actually make it at that point, now you set up the double play. But if there's no outs, you made it on, okay, that double play, that's great. But the run scores, so not turning it. So the first and third, or just third, is ideal because almost anything can get that guy home. Now the Cubs can figure out a way to muck that up in all manner of ways, but
oh God, of course, don't challenge them.
Right. I mean, but that's, you'd think, hey, all you need is a single with a runner on second. But if you get that guy to third, any fly ball of medium depth and beyond is going to get them home, or a ground ball to the correct. Except what they'll do is hit a hard grounder to third and still have the runner gunned down at home, right? Or just pop one up or something. I mean, there's so many other things there, but you just look at that and go, how many times? 8 out of 9. I don't even know what the odds are on that, but look at the run scoring probability.
You could look that up. Yeah, you could look at the run
scoring probability of a runner on second and no outs is pretty high. So to fail at an 89% clip is actually pretty impressive. I'm kind of impressed by that myself.
Probability of scoring, bases loaded, no outs, no runs, run on second and third. Here we go. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not finding it here.
I know it's all out there.
Expectancy.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll look it up.
Yeah, runner on second, no outs. I gotta think it's like, I mean, it's got to be north of 33%, right? I mean, like 1 out of 3 at least. Like you would think.
Yeah,
that feels fair. It's probably in that neighborhood. I mean, because when you think about all the different things that could happen to make that go, and yet they somehow can't do it, which is again frustrating. And they had opportunities right there in the and then and there was some weird stuff last night in the game too, or yesterday. I don't know if we want to talk about, speaking of Wilson Contreras earlier, and the whole him being thrown out at second base, and then Xander Bogaerts getting, which I'm sure at some point there's probably some Red Sox fan out there that thinks Contreras is dirty, but it pisses me off that Bogaerts, or essentially anybody, like, he was blocking 90% of the base. The outside corner was available to Contreras, and he got Bogaerts with the, I think it was like the heel cleat, the heel spike of his foot as he was going in, but he had no chance to catch the bag at all. He could not have maintained the bag at all from where he slid in. And I understand, like, Bogaerts wasn't smothering it in an attempt to block. Like, he went down to a knee to try to field the throw. But just like at home plate, if the catcher blocks, right, they've enacted rules for the safety. And I know they talk about the neighborhood rules. There's other things like you can't go in hard and all that stuff. But there's no way a second baseman or a shortstop should be able to just block that entire bag like that. He had about this much room to get onto, and then you can't maintain the bag because if you can't slide into it, you can't stay
they don't call that rule in Major League Baseball. Like, hardly ever do they call blocking. They just don't do it. They'll do it in Little League all the time for some odd reason. But I think in Major League Baseball they won't do it.
It's the weirdest, and we've seen some of those rules where it's very subjective with guys going in, even when you see guys sliding in, right? Like, okay, did he make an attempt to get to the bag? Was he trying to knock the guy down? And I get it. Like, that's a safety thing. And I understand why they've enacted that. But you know what else is a safety thing? Is somebody coming at you with their spikes as they slide into the bag. And if you're covering that whole thing, especially when it's like your leg, if you're taking a spike to the knee, that's not going to feel good. Good. Right. And I get he wasn't trying to, but there's a point at which you go, I don't care if you were trying to or not. How are you calling that guy out when he couldn't have slid safely into the bag at all? And I first listened to it on the radio, and the way they were describing it was exactly how it ended up being. And then when I finally turned around and saw it, I was like, and I tweeted about it. I was like, it sucks that Bogaerts got hurt. I don't want to see anybody, have to get 7 stitches in their leg. But at the same time, dude, like, what do you expect? Like that, and Ron Coomer's on the broadcast, like, I would have trucked him into left field. Not like in a bad way, not like I'm trying to hurt this dude, but he's covering the bag. That is your bag. As a runner, you have the right to that bag. Knock him off of it. And you kind of have to. Not like, who was it? Was it Chase Utley? Is that who had the really nasty one, the collision like a few years back where he just absolutely body trucked the dude and just knocked him the hell out? Not like Albert Bell beating the hell out of Francisco Vina or Fernando Vina. Is that who it was? Stuff like that. But anyway, that was kind of bothersome. There's and little moments like that. Again, that was the double steal, right? He gets thrown out at second. They'd have had runners on second and third with one out or whatever instead of a runner on third and 2 outs, right? That we talk about run expectancy. Little things like that change the complexion of the game right there, and that could have made that difference. If who knows? They'd probably have found a way to screw it up anyway. But still, I want something to bitch about.
It's like you know them so well.
Yeah, it's weird. Like we're talking about, whoa, the Cubs got screwed here. Yeah, well, you know what? They've done enough screwing themselves. So
maybe
the umps just did them a favor. They were like, it would have been too embarrassing for you to have failed with two runners in scoring position and only 1 out. We went ahead and did the job for you. Save you some effort.
Good day. So the Cubs have been winning quite a few games. They've won 4 of their last 5 series, which is really impressive for a team that's as bad as they are. They just took 2 or 3 from the Red Sox. They took 2 or 3 from the the Cardinals. They took 2 or 3 from the Reds, and 2 or 3 from the Braves. Now, of course, they lost 3 or 4 to the Pirates, which makes no sense whatsoever. And the one game they won, they had to score 14 runs to win it, and the Pirates had no problem scoring runs in that series. So that was weird, and this whole season is kind of a little strange. But what's really cool is to see these younger guys coming up. Nelson Velasquez is there. Narciso Crook has been up. He's probably not going to. Did he get sent back?
He got optioned, for Suzuki.
Yeah, okay. Suzuki is in the lineup today, and that game starts here in about a little more than a half an hour. But the Cubs have been playing very well. Their average since at the beginning of that Cardinals series on June 24th, they're leading the league with a 288 batting average. Only 10 home runs, though, which it's not terrible. It's probably about, kind of middle of the road in terms of Major League Baseball over that same stretch. But yeah, playing well. The bats are they're hitting the ball. And their pitching has been really good. I mean, they're over that same period of time, 3.47 ERA. They're not issuing many walks, about just 2.7 walks per game, which is extraordinarily good. And they're striking out about 10 batters a game. So really playing well. What I want to see is the starters. Let's see how the starters are doing over that same stretch. So starting pitching, 4.29 ERA, so not quite as good, but the relievers are just shutting it down.
Mm-hmm.
So their relievers have a 2.63 ERA over that same stretch, and that's over 41 innings. That's crazy. The only other team that has over 40 innings is Toronto. They're 24th over that same stretch, and Tampa Bay, who is last in MLB. So just goes to show you how strong the Cubs bullpen is. Don't get too used to them, though, because they're probably all going to be traded away in just a few weeks. So,
oh, God,
I don't know. It really feels like, though, and we've talked about this in the past, that the Cubs have a team here that they could add 2 or probably 3 like superstars to, and be good and be real good.
Or like one superstar and 2, and of course part of that's like, say a Suzuki's been gone for, and I try not to harp on this too often, but he's been out for a month. He got hurt on the 26th of May, and they put him on the DL or the IL 4 days later. So I know they can go retroactive to the 27th, right? So it's really only one game that he made, but in the meantime, that's fine. And it doesn't really matter. The retroactivity part doesn't matter because he was still out for a month. So it's not like a minimum stay, right, where that would have mattered. The problem is that for 4 days, they played a man down, just like with Jason Hayward. They waited like 4 or 5 days to put him on the IL. They played with a man down that meantime. So it sort of feels like Suzuki's been out for so long, and like Marcus Stroman, I mean, he got rocked in his rehab start last night. Part of which is probably because he was just trying to pump fastballs and locate and that sort of thing, and probably not mixing pitches very much. But it feels like now all of a sudden they're getting some guys back, right? So it's almost like you've added a player because he's been gone for so long. But there again, we're talking about they're able to put runners in. Now the thing is, you mentioned this. Part of the reason they've been really good during this late stretch here, and part of why things would have gotten better, is their rotation or their lineup, I'm sorry, is so top heavy. A bunch of the guys that are like, hey, Ian Happ's having a career year, Wilson Contreras having a career year. They're getting guys, Patrick Wisdom's driving in runs. There's some things that happen in the top half of the order. But when your bottom half of the order is comprised of like, for a while there, Alfonso Rivas was having a real hard time. He's kind of coming around a little bit. But, I mean, when you're talking about putting Jason Hayward in the lineup every day at the bottom third, and when you're having Andrelton Simmons playing frequent innings and things like that, like, of course you're not driving in any runs with those guys. But then Chris Morel goes into a slump, and they move him down to 9. Now he gets hot. Well, now all of a sudden you're talking about, hey, top half of the order is doing some stuff. Oh, hey, and here we go. Alfonso Rivas is doing a little bit now. P.J. Higgins is driving in some runs. Velasquez is hitting fairly well. Morel is down in the 9 spot driving in runs. Wow, holy cow. You mean if we put guys at the bottom of the order who can hit, it'll help?
And how dare you?
Yeah, and similarly, like let's say Nico Horner, right? He's been doing really, really well. He's like the most overlooked person to me, which is so weird. Like, not that other people overlook him.
In Major League
Baseball,
Baseball, I would say. I think Cubs fans are not overlooking him, but I think definitely
I overlook
in MLB.
Him. Yeah, I just do for whatever reason. I don't, because I think it's not that I'm down on him that I think he'll be bad, but I'm consistently underrating him just kind of because of his game. But I think we mentioned this before. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, Carlos Correa's in there at shortstop, right? And now Nico Horner's at second base, which means there's no Nick Madrigal. There's no Andrelton Simmons. We're not seeing those guys but every 5th day at most, right? And Horner is your everyday second baseman. Yep. Think about like that. That's where the upgrade, like Correa over Horner, the way Horner's hitting is not necessarily the upgrade. The upgrade is Horner over whoever's been playing second base, David Bowes, right? I mean, it's just like they're not getting any production out of that spot whatsoever. And God, it would be so different if they just had one of those guys. Or again, if Suzuki's healthy the whole time, or if you have, I feel pretty good about Suzuki, Morel, and Happ right now. That's a fine little outfield.
And you mentioned Jason Hayward. I mean, the last game he played was June 24th, and since then the Cubs have won 3 series in a row.
Huh?
And weird. So it's kind of weird that the Cubs win when Jason Hayward is not in the lineup, and that's not all Jason Hayward, obviously. But you're right. I mean, Nelson Velasquez, Seiya Suzuki, Chris Morel, Ian Happ. I mean, all those guys are better than Jason Hayward. And, David Ross had spoken about, this loyalty factor that he has to Jason Hayward. That's bullshit. I don't get that. This is Major League Baseball. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars. There is no such thing as loyalty unless the player is producing. And when you got a guy who's hitting, right around 200 and his defense is clearly regressing, that's it. You can't justify putting him in the lineup. And now the Cubs are winning with him out of it. And like I said, we're better off seeing, the younger guys come up. And the thing is that these younger guys that are coming up aren't like top prospects. Christopher Morel, I think, was a 21st ranked prospect. He's probably going to go up on that list now. But these aren't like top 10 prospects by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, those guys are still developing down in the minors, but you still want to bring these guys up because you never know. And that's what's so unpredictable about baseball in general, is you can bring a prospect up that's not like a top 10, top 20 prospect, and he could turn into an amazing baseball player. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you don't know that unless you do it. And so it's good to see the Cubs doing it, and obviously it's because of the injuries that they've seen. But whatever the reason is, it'll be really interesting to see how things pan out as the trade deadline comes up and who they end up trading. Yeah, it's like it feels like it's either gonna be a complete fire sale, or they'll trade like they'll keep Contreras and Hap, and they'll trade maybe like Robertson and kind of some of the
Yeah,
Smiley
a
guys like
closer
that.
who only gets to save games once a week.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
But he's
but
been
that's a guy
great.
who, yeah, I mean, but he's talking about somebody who's created tremendous value, right, based on the contract the Cubs got him on, and then how he's pitched, and he's been fantastic, and actually, he has gotten a lot more use lately. But what's interesting, and you mentioned that too, a lot of the whole thing, what's goes into prospect rankings is not even so, but like they're so heavily biased toward potential and youth, right? So when the Cubs got all these new guys and they're very young, 17, 18, 19 years old, when you talk about, Christian Hernandez being drafted and Pete Crow Armstrong and Owen Casey and James Triantos and all these guys, whether they were prep players or they just got drafted, they're very young. And so there's a lot of helium around those guys because they're so young. Whereas if you look at no top 30 list is going to show you Jake Slaughter or Matt Mervis. And I've written about those guys. I wrote about them both recently, along with Cole Roederer, who's another one. And they got him, right? Roederer is a little bit overlooked because he was their third pick in 2018 behind Nico Horner and Brennan Davis. So when those are your top two picks, third fiddle, not great. But he also had elbow reconstruction. He had to sit out, most of last year. But all three of them are just raking at Tennessee right now. And Mervis is a dude who, let's see. So we've talked about the Cubs needing left-handed thunder. We've talked about Frank Schwindel is a definite question mark at first base, right? And they've got Rivas, but if you look at kind of somebody who's that prototypical, Mervis like 6'4", 225, left-handed hitting. He's right-handed thrower, first baseman, but he's 24 years old. So in the prospect world, that's a little bit old. Jake Slaughter, third baseman, but he's 25 years old. And had some mediocre seasons prior to getting to Tennessee and really taking off. But those dudes are the kind of guys who you need to come up and provide a little depth. Maybe they're not going to be all-stars, maybe. I mean, maybe they will. Who knows?
You don't know.
But you look at those lists, and the reason a lot of times people are so highly rated is because, man, this guy's got all these tools, and he's only 18 years old. And so you're totally projecting and saying, we think that in 4 years – he'll continue to develop along this path and be really, really good. Whereas, this dude, 25, man. Oh, geez, he's only in Double A and he's 25 years old. Screw that guy. He can't be in the top 40. And yet he might be a better baseball player, or he's a more complete baseball player. It's just that there's no projection left. And so they don't rank him very highly,
It's true. I mean, I'm looking right now. He's batting .319. Mervis is batting .319 with 19 home runs.
Yeah. I mean, he's
over
he looks,
South Bend and
dude,
Tennessee.
he looks the part, right? Like, and he's a Duke guy, which some people hate Duke, but generally, it's a fairly good university, right? Probably got a pretty decent education. Not anybody can just get in there. He's one of those guys, and I hesitate to say it, but when you watch him play, you're like, dude, that's a dude. I mean, he feels like he gets it, and he's pissed off when he doesn't drive in the run, and he expects that of himself. And again, Slaughter's another one. So and Roederer having a very, very good season at Tennessee. They promoted him pretty quickly. He was like a week at Myrtle Beach, spent 3 weeks at South Bend, and then got bumped to Double A. And so that's another dude. Again, not a ton of power, but kind of that speedy, pesky outfield, extra outfield kind of guy. I just think we pay a lot of attention, and rightfully so, to Pete Crow Armstrong, whose catch the other day was insane. The amount of ground he covered, right? And I found this interesting. So he has a 70 grade fielding score on the 2080 scouting scale. I don't know if you saw this in there, but do you know how many of 900 ranked prospects throughout baseball, minor league baseball, how many of them, 900, how many of them have a 70 grade scouting score?
Of 900, and it's 70 of 80, right?
Yeah.
I'd guess maybe 50.
8.
Wow. Really? Wow.
8. There are 8 total. And I don't know how many of those are at what positions, but I would guess probably most of them are like shortstop types, right? That's usually the guys who have the most hype in that regard. But after watching that play, if you look at where he started to where he finished and the fact that he made, I don't know that there are two other guys in professional baseball, period, from rookie ball all the way through the majors who make that play in those circumstances. Like,
well, the catch itself was a great catch.
Yeah.
The fact that he had to cover, what was like 200 feet.
Just to get there. And he was shading a right-handed batter to go oppo, basically. He was in the right center field gap and made it over to the wall in the left center power alley and kind of had that diving over the shoulder. But again, guys like him, again, I mentioned Triantos and Casey and Christian Hernandez and all those, they should get a ton of hype. I think there's so much potential in all of them. But at the same time, right, we see a lot of these, and it's great, and they'll have to fill that out. But guess what? They're called prospects for a reason. They're not all going to make it. And the other thing is, some of them may end up getting traded. And if you have, more of a known commodity, just a solid ball player, whether that be Slaughter or Mervis or Roeder, or some of these guys that can actually move up and then, kind of have that transition to the majors. We've seen it with Morel, right? Yeah. If somebody can get in and establish themselves, just like we saw, right? The reason Gleyber Torres is with the Yankees is because the Cubs had two guys ahead of him in Javi Baez and then the piece of trash Addison Russell, who they felt, hey, these guys are established. We think they're going to be our middle infield for the next 5 or 6 years. So Gleyber Torres has no place to go. We cannot promote him and have him play every day at a spot right now. We have Chris Bryant at third. Hey, he's got a ton of value in a trade. That enables you, if you get a guy to come up and establish himself, then you can look down the line at some of these players. Because guess what? Kevin Made and Ed Howard and Christian Hernandez cannot all play shortstop at the same time, especially if you've already got Nico Horner. And what if they do go out and sign a shortstop? Then that really makes those guys what you would call, what Jed Hoyer would refer to as prospect currency.
But that's where, if they do sign a shortstop, you hope that they either sign him and get some value, or it's maybe a 3-year deal, which is probably not very realistic with a player like Correa or even
he did
Bogarts.
It once.
Yeah, but
who knows? Bogarts might he might not be real happy with the Cubs now. He's not going to want to come there. Although Contreras might not be around, but after that experience, but you mentioned
these older prospects, though, and I think something that needs to be taken away from this is that these are exactly the type of guys that the Cubs need in Chicago.
Yeah,
they need these older guys because they're younger, kind of hyped prospects. They're not coming up to Chicago for 2 or 3 years. And so you got to have something to fill the gap. And that's where you've got guys like Slaughter and Mervis that are raking at AA. And, why not bring them up? I mean, and that's what they did with Morel, right? And look, Morel's been doing just fine,
Schwarber came up from AA when he came through. Yeah. A lot of guys come up without much time at AAA. And that may very well be something. I mean, like you said, if it's a full out fire sale and they start moving all kinds of guys, right, there's going to be a lot of room open on that 40-man roster. I mean, that's the issue right now, is they don't want to move anybody because those guys aren't rostered players yet. And obviously we've seen from them that the Cubs will do just about anything to avoid putting so. Which, speaking of which, we mentioned Narciso Crook earlier, and I know we had talked about Michael Hermosillo, like the forgotten man. Like everybody's like, what's up with Hermosillo? And the only thing we've heard about him for the last month is that the other day when he got put on the 60-man or the 60-day, in order to free up a roster spot. Which part of it was like, man, do you think they could convince Hayward to think his knee's bad enough to go on the 60-day? That's not like obviously that's not.
What's the difference between that and cutting him?
I mean, well. He'd be better off to be DFA'd, because then at least he can go find a team and go play something. Maybe a team will sign him, right?
Either way you're paying him. It's just one way. Do you feel like you're saving face?
Yeah, does that happen at the deadline? I still don't see. It's like the Bears. This is the Bears with Nagy and Pace, where for a year and a half everyone's going like, just fire them already. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's the Bears. They're going to hold on to him till the end. And then, the Detroit game in the season before last, everybody's like, okay, they got to be fired after this, right? Nope, they're still in this season and the next. And that's where they were just like, all right, he's got to be DFA'd now, right? Nope, loyalty, baby. He's going to stick around. And like I said, I'm repeating myself, but there's a way you could look at this and say it would actually be greater loyalty to him to search around and find a team that would sign him to the veterans minimum to play the rest of the season, to be that bench outfield bat and leader on a competitive team, like kind of like what Albert Pujols has been the last couple of years for teams, than to just hold on to him and keep running him out there. Because again, I believe that fans will be more accepting of him and welcome him more warmly. Like if that dude came back as part of another team, whatever, let's say Atlanta picks him up or the Dodgers or somebody, right? Like now he's gone. He's not the dude who's putting up crappy at bats and who people want to, because right now he's just got a tremendous target on his back and fans are pissed off about it. They don't like him being in the lineup, and he is the object of scorn really through no fault of his own, right? He's not the one putting himself in the lineup, but I would merit that if he were to be DFA'd, picked up by someone else, and come back to Wrigley Field as a visitor, he would get a very warm welcome, as a result, kind of like Albert Almora, right? Like we saw that again with the Reds. Everybody's like, "Oh, look at Albert Almora doing these things." Oh, if the Cubs had only given him a chance, we saw that again. I'm like,
yeah,
y'all realize he got more. And there was an article about it though. I think some writer in Cincinnati had written about this, like how Almora went from being cut by the Cubs to now being the Reds starting right fielder. I'm like, first of all, you're the Reds, okay? You're one of only a few teams in the league that's worse than the Cubs. So let's not treat this like this guy is. And he's got like a 90 WRC plus. So he's still a below average offensive producer. This isn't like some crazy reclamation project that he has now blossomed into an all-star, right? Like he's still the same dude. But anyway, I digress. That's my rant.
Well, and I'm sure you have seen this, but there's this Jason Hayward Baseball Academy, this multi-million-dollar facility that they're in the process of building right now. I don't think it's going to be done until next year. So that has to be playing a factor in all of this. You're building this huge Jason Hayward Baseball Academy in Chicago. It's, I'm sure there are some influential people behind it. Not the least of which is probably Ricketts in some way, shape, or form. And so that would probably be tough where you DFA a guy who's getting ready to open up this enormous, and I don't know if you saw the video the other day. I think it was on Marquee before the game. The thing is, it's not small. It is a big, huge, multi-million-dollar facility out on the west side, and there's a lot of hype around it, and so that has to be playing into this whole thing.
I'm sure. I mean, and Hayward's talked about how like Chicago is his hometown now. I mean, he lives there year round. He is a fixture in the community. He does a ton of philanthropy, and so did Anthony Rizzo. So I mean, there's we saw what happened there, but I do feel like that is when they're looking at it and saying, a lot of us look at it and say, hey, it's a sunk cost for a negative value player. Go ahead and move on because he's not going to get better with age, and you could use that roster spot for a younger player. Whereas they look at it and say it's a sunk cost, and some have theorized that Tom Ricketts will not allow them to move on from him, that he's basically using Jason Hayward, for lack of a better term, as like the scarlet letter that Jed has to wear. Certainly that was left over from Theo Epstein. That sorry, dude, you're going to wear this. You're going to keep, which is a really dumb thing to me. If
I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not the case.
But it's saying like, this is your reminder, but there comes a point where, and a lot of people be like, well, he still plays good defense. Okay. Yeah. And
he has a negative defensive ranking this year. He's got a negative
and his overall value is negative. And that's what the whole thing with Frazier, I had people arguing about that and saying, well, but Frazier plays bad defense and Hayward's is good. It was like, okay, we could make that argument if we were talking about a team that was competitive and you said, hey, the Cubs are fighting for a division lead or for a wild card spot, and they need areas of incremental improvement of a player who, all things being equal, if there's an individual skill that he brings to the table that is better than someone else, you could say, hey, this is our backup fourth outfielder, and he can be in there for defense, and that's going to help us create outs at the end of games, and that's going to end up winning us an extra game or two, and there you go. I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. Jackson Frazier could be the shittiest right fielder in baseball. The amount of value that Jason Hayward provides as a right fielder at this point, A, is not enough to make up for the difference in offensive profile between the two of them. But B, doesn't matter because the Cubs are not good, and there's zero that winning an extra game here or there based on an incremental improvement in defensive ability is going to create. And that's where a lot of people are like, oh, well, this guy has Anderson Simmons is a better defensive player. It doesn't matter. That has zero bearing on this season. Zero. There is nothing that winning an extra game from improved defense is going to do to help this team now. And guess what? Neither of those players is part of the future. So there's no point there. And that's my problem with it is, they used to go out and get speedsters. Remember what that would be when they get that, you'd get the roster expansion in September and you'd see the Cubs go out without fail at the end of the year. They'd get Quentin Berry or somebody like that. They'd pick up this dude who was just there for speed. And that dude would come in and pinch run from second or third, something like that late in the game. And that's it. That's the only time the dude would play. Or if they had a Joe Madden meatloaf lineup, where they didn't care and they'd already won 2 games in the series and Sunday was getaway day. And here you go. That is that's what you do when you're a winning ball club and when you expect to win. When you're a losing ball club and you expect to be mediocre at best, then finding little incremental areas of improvement is not the goal. The goal is, how do we find ways to shore up our future and to understand who is going to be a dude and what are the spots we need to either have that guy who's in single A, who's in rookie ball, that we still need to be looking at that dude as like, okay, we think in a couple years you could be in Chicago, or we think, we've got a piece here that we think might work. This guy's a little bit more expendable. You don't find that out by playing Jason Hayward every day in right field. You just or Anderson Simmons at all.
Well, do you know what Hayward's? I'm looking at this now. What his season slugging percentage is?
I don't even want to think about it.
It's 277, 16th worst in all of baseball. 277 slugging percentage. He's got a 278 on base percentage. I mean, that's terrible. That's bad at no matter what level you're at.
Yeah.
It's
how many is that out of qualified hitters or how many 16th worst out of how
that's
many?
At a minimum of 150 plate appearances.
So how many batters? How many qualified?
How many batters are
how many people are in that sample?
Oh, 281.
Okay. So 260-ish, 265 players are better. And
that's right.
At least, and that's a minimum of 150 plate appearances. So obviously, if you expand that, there might be some who are worse, but there's a whole hell of a lot more who are better. And that's the issue, right? And here's the other issue that I have with that is today's league is just it. You can't put dudes at the corner spots who can't produce runs. And right field has always been one of those. I mean,
like Jonathan VR. Did you see VR got picked up by the Angels? I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he got picked up by anybody. But dude, that guy was awful. I'm so glad he's gone.
Yeah, that was
God. He was the worst defender I think I've ever seen.
Right. And speaking of now, there's a point at which defensive butchery gets way worse, and that was one of them to where we're talking about, especially on the infield, right, where I can see that making a difference. So I don't want to walk back my overall statement too much. But I think it does change a little bit when you're talking about infield defense, particularly middle infield, with a pitching staff that gets a lot of ground balls. And when you have a lot of young pitchers who you're trying to figure out, hey, what can these guys be? If you keep running out these zombies to just kind of walk around the infield and have balls doink off their gloves if they manage to get there at all, that just extends innings. It psychologically it's not great. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. So that part's kind of tough. So I was glad to see that happen, but I'm also like, all right, well, that's about 2 weeks later than it should have been, a minimum,
Yeah.
So.
Everything's taken a while. Like all the obvious moves have taken like way too long for the Cubs to make. And I mean, obviously they're dragging their feet because I think they would rather have a worse record this year than a better record. They're going to probably be in the lottery. So
maybe, man, they keep winning these series. Although we say that, and then eventually,
just wait.
Yeah, there's at least one of the big driving factors is likely to be traded, and especially now with Hendricks pitching really well. I mean, I know he says it would come as a shock, but boy, if they get an offer, you know what I mean? Like, and again,
he has a couple more good outings.
Yeah.
You can bank on him being traded.
Yeah. I mean, you think about a team like the Mets being able to add that in behind, DeGrom and Scherzer are both doing rehabs and coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about with only one more year under contract, right? If the Cubs do end up trading Happ, and I think even if they trade Contreras, I still think they're looking at 24 as a competitive. I don't think they look at 23 as a competitive year. So if that's the case, then what good are you getting out of Hendricks? Do you want to risk that he's going to get off to another slow start next year with less control? Whereas if you trade him now, a team gets him for the second half and for next year. So I don't know. The second half could end up being very, very. And who knows? Maybe it'll at least be like it was like last year.
Entertaining.
At least if you're bringing these dudes up and getting a look at players who you expect to be part of the future in one way or another, and you can do so without any expectations for the team being any good at all, it does at least remove any anxiety around it. So,
yeah, I think it'll be a good thing. Okay, so the Cubs are getting ready to start the game. We probably want to get out of here soon just so we can publish the podcast portion of this. But just touch on the Cubs-Brewers series. The Cubs have done fairly well against the Brewers this season. They're going to come in and let's see who the starters are for this series. I'm going to pull that up real quick. The Cubs are throwing, we know Steele today, Lauer against Lauer, who is one of the worst pitchers on the Brewers staff, and then Hendricks against Alexander tomorrow, and then Sampson, who's been really, really good so far, against Corbin Burns, who has also been very good. So it should be interesting to see what happens. It'd be nice, obviously, if Steele can come out and pitch well. He's pitched really well, actually. As I think 4 of his last 5 starts, he's had under two or less earned runs. And so, when he's got the defense behind him, he really is pitching well. And he hasn't given up a lot of home runs this year, which is something that the Brewers live on, basically. So if you can stop the Brewers from hitting home runs, which has killed the Cubs when they played the Brewers and lost to them, then you have a good chance. And so I'm feeling good about the game today. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Cubs do tend to do well against the Brewers. I like Steele going against them. I like the matchup there, and I mean, hey, this is a Cubs team that's playing overall good competitive baseball for the last stretch of the last 2 weeks or so, and especially here these last 9 games. So yeah. I like their chances, and I think in this series overall, I think the matchup's set up, fairly well. I would not be surprised. I don't think anything a sweep would surprise me either way. But if the Cubs took 2 out of 3, I wouldn't be shocked. And if they dropped 2 out of 3, I'd be even less shocked. So, I mean, I think this is a bit of a toss-up.
Yeah, you got Suzuki back. So he's batting 4th today, and cleanup. Morel, Contreras, Happ, Suzuki, Horner, Wisdom, Gomes, Velasquez, and Bodie. I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. I'd rather see Higgins in there, but he played yesterday. And I think Bodie is awful, but
yeah,
and something's going to have to give there too. But
well, at least the shoulder's okay if he's in there. You know what I mean? Like that looked a little when he had the collision, which I love that they kept him in for a while. It's like, oh, it's just your surgically repaired shoulder, and he just banged straight into another player with it.
Yeah,
no big deal. We'll let just stick it out for a while, but apparently it's okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, when you look at the lineup up and down, I mean, with Contreras in there, obviously, and Ian Happ, those are 2 big pieces. And again, when you look at it, it just looks like a lineup that Nico Horner and with Suzuki coming back and Velasquez in there and Morel, it's just you can build around that, and you start bringing up the guys like we had talked about, maybe Mervis or Slaughter or any of a number of other maybe a little bit older guys who can probably do pretty well next season. It's just a matter of what the Cubs' approach next season is going to be, and so we won't know that. Obviously, we'll probably have a little bit more color in about a month.
Yeah.
So from there, we'll figure it out. But anyways, that's about it for our show today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will we'll circle back with you guys midweek after this Brewers series and chat it up. Hopefully, we'll be talking about a sweep by the Cubs. The Cubs need a sweep. They haven't swept anybody this year, have they?
Not that I can recall.
No,
unless something's changed that I don't know about. No,
I don't think so. So a sweep would be nice, but we're I feel like we're getting a little greedy, but
yeah, probably.
Yeah. So anyways, that's it for us today.
Cool. Happy 4th, everybody. Stay safe.
See you later. Stay safe.